So, hey guys, hope you're all doing well. I brought Bob Hela here with me. Bob and I have known each other now for quite a few years, actually.
Quite a few years now, yeah. It could be, 3 years maybe. Yeah.
One of the things that marked the first time I met you was talking about this style of meditation called Vipassana, which I hadn't done yet. I didn't know much about it. I was always interested in meditation, but I had never explored it at all. And then you came back from a Vipassana retreat, 10 days of silence, and
couldn't shut up about it.
Yeah, you're like, you gotta go do this. You gotta go do this, man. So anyway, that was what, 4 or 5 years ago? 4 years ago about.
About just under, maybe about 3.5 years ago, yeah.
Because I went 2.5 years ago.
So
I've been once for the 10-day retreat.
Well,
You've now been.
I've been twice, two 10 days, 1 3-day, and one day, so refresher.
So I found Vipassana was really instrumental to me learning how to deal with and process emotions, and particularly around handling and identifying cravings and aversions, that sort of point of pain that you feel your mind pushing you in some direction relentlessly, and learning how to disconnect with that. And it comes up a lot in Brojo classes, in articles I write, in coaching sessions I do. And so what I really wanted to do is sit down with you and then talk about what Vipassana was, what it meant for us, what we've noticed, so that we've got it down. We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
But so that everyone else can get a sense of what it looks like from the inside as an experience, as best as we can tell. Now, one of the key things I want to point out here is that you and I compare our experiences, and they're very different.
Very different, yeah.
And I hear that from everyone. It's such a personal experience. So we, as much as we'll try, we cannot tell you what you're going to experience at all.
Your experience will be unique to you. It will be very unique, and we'll be very, very interested to hear about it, because you'll find that even during the course itself, and when it's finished on the 10th day, when you break the noble silence, everybody's story is different, their experience is different, and which is what makes it exciting, because that means like you have your own personal, unique experience to look forward to if you ever decide to take this journey of learning Vipassana.
I straight away, I highly recommend you give it a go. It's a pretty big commitment for a lot of people to take 10 days off work, but it is one of the most important things I've done.
Well, technically it's only 7 days of work, because it's also over the weekend.
Good point.
So it's over the weekend. It starts Wednesday evening, and so you're basically only taking Thursday, Friday, and then the whole week the week after, because it goes over the weekend. So it's a 7 days leave.
So I thought what we do is talk a little bit about what the actual design of Vipassana is as the experience, as the camp. Just to give everyone an idea, I'll start there, and then if you want to add anything from your experience there. So, but I did want to say, in terms of it being such a different experience for everyone I know, for you, for me, for women that I've talked to, it reminds me a lot of the gym. If you take 100 people and you send them to the gym and you have them do the same routine, each of them are going to do it a little bit differently. Each of them are going to feel sore in different ways. Each of them are going to have certain muscles that are stronger, certain attributes, like maybe they're stronger in balance, so the deadlifts are easier for them. Maybe their grip strength is strong. All those little minute differences in each of us play a huge role in what the overall experience is like and in what you get out of it. Because obviously you'll be most challenged in your weaker areas, so that's where you're going to feel it. And for each of us, that's so different. That's so different, you know. And that's why it's amazing how such a simply designed exercise can be so different for each of us and so transformative, you know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy, because that's how I usually describe it to people. That it's pretty much like going to the gym, but going to the gym sort of like a boot camp in your mind. You know, it's a mind boot camp, and just like what you said, depending on how much you put in, you get back in this mind boot camp. And so there's a lot of people who don't get as much, but then when I do talk to them, they tell me that, oh, I didn't really follow the schedule as much, and sometimes I do skip some of the sessions and all that. But those people that I have spoken to that actually just immerse into it, they have a lot richer experiences. And I believe, just like the gym, those people who actually really dug into the routine and just did every single session and just believe in the process and allowed themselves to immerse into the journey, they're usually the people with the most development and becomes fitter. So you get what you put in, just like the gym.
On that note, so when you go to the experience as a beginner, you're put in the large group with the beginners, and towards the front of the meditation room are what they call the old students.
The old students. Yeah.
And there's usually like a fifth or
very small,
a much smaller group. These guys have done at least one 10-day session. Many of them have done 4 or 5. Because I talked to some of them on day 10, and I'm like, well, yeah, this is my 5th one. I'm like, what?
I met someone who did 18.
That's 50 days. Yeah, that's crazy.
18, and I'm like, wow.
There are people that do this full time, basically. And this is the thing about Vipassana, is that the experience is a minimum of 10 days. But in other parts of the world, people go for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
Yeah. They run that every now and then in New Zealand, but not as often. But yeah.
But what I wanted to say I noticed about the old students, these guys, clearly they've been through the 10-day experience before, and it just stunned me how I was struggling to sit still. This hurt, that hurt, my legs cramping up, my back hurts. I had to keep shifting, and they are sitting there like stone statues. And I'm like, how? For hours, stone statues. Like, these are just, I was like, these guys must be professionals or something. No, they understood how to process those, and they understood the value of holding still through that inner turmoil, that inner torture.
The strong determination, they call it.
It was amazing to see, but now I get it. Now I understand why they did it, and I understand that it wasn't just being cool. It was, they knew what they were getting out of that self-control and that detachment from the constant urge to shift and run away from every cramp.
It's quite funny because on the second Vipassana, 10-day Vipassana that I went to, I got that same comment from people from the new student behind me. It's like, man, I don't know how you do that. And but honestly though, from an old student point of view, going to the second time, what I've noticed is that it was actually just as hard. The first 2 days was what I felt like it was as hard as the first course that I did. But I think the difference was I like you said, I understood the process, understood the purpose of why you're meant to sit still and not move for the whole hour or for the whole session. But yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was getting that comment from people. It's like, how? Because people get creative with how they sit, like put 3 cushions on each knee and
yeah. You do anything to try to get comfortable.
Almost creating a couch. Around.
I've seen the pile of. It's like, did you just bring a futon? Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about how the course is run. So if you do a 10-day experience, the way it works is you'll leave a large city. There are Vipassana centers all over the world. There is no cost to do the course, but at the end of the course, you're given the opportunity to donate. And I think the cost to feed you and house you and so on for those 10 days is something like 350 New Zealand, something around there.
They say the cost of everything for a student is about like $200, something like that. But yeah. So you're encouraged to contribute that to pay for the next guy who wants to do it, but
there's no obligation to, which is beautiful actually. Yeah. It's definitely not a money making endeavor. I mean, they feed you good food.
Yeah. And they don't tell you what to donate. They just said like whatever it is, whatever it costs to you, whatever its value to you, then and
give that to others.
pay that value forward. So because that's how they fund the courses. So the donations from the students that's
how they
done
keep
the
the
course.
lights on.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is the amazing thing is that there are how many centers around the world? 50 or so? I mean, there's these are
Something
big
like that,
centers,
yeah.
and they each do 100 students a week, roughly. I mean, every 10 days they just run courses back to back. Sometimes bigger centers. It's the fact that it's impacted that many lives and has grown that far, all on donations, is very significant.
Very
I think it tells
impressive,
you.
yeah.
Straight away that we're not just two loony guys here talking about somebody. There's something to this, and we'll do our best to relate to what that is for us. But the experience of the 10 days, I did no research into this before I went. I didn't read anything. I just figured out where it was on the map, and then it was like, okay, 10 days off, okay.
It was the same for me. I read a little bit. I read the website, but even the website sort of like just gives you an overview, really. And I thought I want to go to the course without any bias, without any prior sort of like idea from anyone, and so I didn't YouTube it or anything like that. I just went.
I was so busy trying to wrap up work before I was gone for 10 days. I'm like, I'm working double time, and then so I walked in there with no clue what was going to happen. I knew it was silent for the 10 days, but I didn't understand why, and I just had no preconceptions at all of what this was going to be like. So the experience.
Didn't know how hard it was.
It will, the experience will sound very intense, and but from my personal experience, it was very bearable, and I'll explain what I mean in a second. So you're not talking at all for 10 days. You give up your phone. You don't communicate with anybody unless there's an emergency for 10 days solid. You don't even make eye contact. You look at the ground when you're walking. There's no communication interaction with anybody.
No hand gestures, or like if you want to show someone the
No
way, you don't do that.
smiles.
No, nothing. You just you pretend. Oh, you act like you are there by yourself.
That's
So,
exactly the experience.
Yeah.
So you sleep by yourself. We get up at 4 a.m. They ring the gong.
Yeah.
And it's not as bad as you think because you go to bed at, what, 9 or 10?
Nine, yeah.
So you get plenty of sleep. It's actually really kind of nice in a way.
It was good. It was good. Yeah.
And you're quite, even though it's intense meditation, you're physically rested. It's kind of like an interesting balance of hard work and relaxing. So I felt like I rested very well at night. I was always sleepy. It'd been hard mental work.
Yeah.
Even though my body's not, I'm not doing gym, I'm not doing yoga, I'm not going running.
And they discourage doing exercise as well. So they tell you not to exercise.
They probably make it quite a bit harder if
Yeah,
your muscles are cramping even more. You'd be like, oh my God. I'm
There's a
dying.
little walk. There's a little walkway that you can sort
Lovely
of like
little waterfall.
walk, so you could sort of like get some air and take a break for a little bit. But yeah.
So yeah, 10 days of absolute silence, and I thought, this is nuts. And most people I mentioned it to, they're like, I couldn't deal with the silence. But what was really fascinating was that after a few days, after five days maybe, I was like, this is brilliant. And the thing was, I spent my whole life paying attention to what's going on around me, paying attention to other people, paying attention to things, paying attention to places, paying attention to activities. So it's the first time I'd ever turned all that off and focused all of my attention 24 hours a day inside my own skin. And that is a very revealing experience that I cannot explain. By day 7 or 8, I felt like it was one of the most brilliant things I'd ever done. I actually felt like there was more interesting, amazing, brilliant stuff to explore in the universe inside my own skin than there was in the universe outside my skin. That was such a weird, I never would have even imagined I could keep myself focused, much less entertained, much less enraptured, interested so deeply in everything I was discovering. And there's no way to explain that to anyone, which is why they say don't even try to explain it to anyone.
Yeah.
We're still going to try, but it is impossible. It's something you have to experience to understand what we mean.
Yeah. So on that silent, so you're in. They call it the noble silence. So for the first 9 days, you don't talk to anybody, and on the 10th day, you break the noble silence, and that's when you get to share experience with other people. But I get that all the time as well. And people ask me like, so what is it like? It's like, oh yeah, you don't talk for a few days, and they go like, I can never do that. Like no talking. I mean, what I always tell people is that that's actually the easy part. The no talking is the easy part. You know, the part that is most challenging for me anyway was the practice itself. You know, learning the meditation technique and having the strong determination to really stuck into the practice and do it and learn it, and you know, look into myself. That is the more challenging part for me. The no talking is almost like a holiday. Like I almost enjoyed not talking, to be honest, and it kind of gave me an opportunity to sort of like serve myself and not always serve the world. Like, because always like in my everyday, I find that, you know, you go to work. You know, you do this thing for your boss, or you do this thing for your workmates, and you come home, you do this thing for your partner, for your family, whoever. There's always a part of you that you're always serving others, and which is not a bad thing. But then the only time that we ever get to, or I should probably ask, like, when do we ever sit and pause and serve ourselves?
I love that, man.
Yeah, you know, maybe when we sleep, but then even then, you know, it's a different thing.
I have to say that was one of the very first times that I can recall where that entire 10 days was dedicated to improving myself and nothing else. There was no distraction from that. And not only that, was all internal improvement. No gym, no, you know, just all psychology, emotional awareness, self-knowledge.
And it was not in any way selfish either. Like it was not depriving anyone of anything. All you're really doing is just nourishing yourself, which is what makes the experience very, very, very special.
I remember feeling when I was done with it. I mean, by day 3, I wanted to quit. I almost quit.
That's the same. We could talk about that.
I was gonna say by day 10, I didn't really want to leave. I was like, of course I need to go back to the world, but I was like, I'm so happy here. And by day 10, I felt like I had earned a PhD in Mike. Like I knew who I was. Like I understood my brain at a level that I never knew I could understand it. And that alone, that was worth it. And that's one 10-day session. You've done 2 of them, plus another 3-day session. So just on that note, again, from the logistical standpoint, you have to do the 10-day session first. Otherwise, you actually won't understand the technique. But once you've done that, they do have 1-day sessions,
like a refresher in Oakland,
3-day sessions, and so you get the opportunity to continue it with a group if you want. And of course, you can do it at home, and you should. I haven't nearly enough.
I haven't been very very diligent about it.
What I found this interesting is I haven't needed to. Like at first I thought I'm going to keep this practice an hour a day. And I wish I'd had the ability to, but without that ongoing exercise, I still notice I continue to get value from that 10-day course. I didn't really get how it had changed me until about a year later, when I was really aware of how differently I look at emotions and how differently, when I feel something, how differently I react to that. But it took time. But that wasn't from ongoing meditation, which is really quite amazing to me.
But then they did mention that in one of these courses. They did say that the 10-day is just the beginning. Goenka, the teacher, the Vipassana teacher, he did mention that this 10-day course is, the 10th day is not the end. In fact, the 10th day is just the beginning. And you'd find that as you carry on with the practice, or even like even after you've done the 10-day course, he said that you should be able to see continuous growth even after. This is sort of like you've just started the boulder rolling, and even doesn't matter how slow it may be, you continue to sort of like gain grounds, and also it doesn't stop after the 10-day if you really do the 10-day properly. But yeah, so that makes sense, because it's the same for me.
That boulder kept rolling, man. It was like a snowball going down a hill. I just kept picking up more snow. So let's dive into our personal experience of the 10-day course. Now, your first one, I remember you told me you tried to escape at a certain point. What was the whole thing like for you?
Okay, so the thing about Vipassana is that as much as I didn't have any idea about Vipassana itself, I sort of like been exposed to mindfulness practices and all those stuff, and I guess even those little experiences that I had sort of like created enough bias that I thought, this is going to be easy. But day one, I realized straight away how busy my mind was. That I don't have control on where my mind goes. The monkey mind that they call it. My mind just goes. I close my eyes, and after like two breath in, breath out, my mind's off, and then I just go ooh. And then I try to bring myself back, and day two sort of like started to get better. Day three, sort of like I started to sort of like, okay, this is okay. Then day four hit when they introduced Vipassana.
Right.
When Vipassana was introduced, that's when I think sort of like I was really pushed to my limit, and I felt like this is just too difficult. That day 5 I wanted to go home. Day 5. It was day 4, I was like, oh. And then day 5 I woke up and I was like, I want to go home. I want to leave this place. I don't know what really kept me. I'm not sure.
The cows did.
Yeah.
The kids. You remember you told me
The what?
You tried to leave in your car, but then the herd of cows surrounded you.
Yeah. So I was gonna go to my cow, but then there was like this a bunch of cows around my.
You were trying to leave in the middle of the night
around the car park, and I was like, well, how am I supposed to get anywhere? And so I just left it. But I stayed. But it was not until so I stayed day 5 also through that struggle. I stayed anyway. Something happened day 6. I think day 6 when I started really being able to really focus properly and was able to connect with myself better, and started to sort of like what they call experiencing what they call the panya or the wisdom that comes out of observing yourself, observing your own sensations. And one of the very what I would say the best experience I've had, and I've told you this about this, I've told everybody this experience because this was like the very first piece of wisdom that I got from Vipassana, is that I struggled to sit cross-legged. So day 1, if this was my knee, I'm literally sort of like that, almost 90 degrees, like that. Then one thing I noticed is that as I observed my body, starting sort of like day 4, day 5, is that I started to notice that pain, wherever it may be, it doesn't stay where it is. It moves. Kind of like how do I explain it? Sort of like when you're watching bacteria through a microscope, where it sort of like just floats around in space, and pain felt like that in my body, that it actually doesn't stay in one place. And one thing that I noticed is that it would stay in one place, but even though it is sort of like still sort of like in motion in some way, and then
it's alive. Yeah,
it's alive. Yeah, it's got its own thing going on, and it would move to a different place, and then it would hover around for a little bit again. Then one thing that I noticed is that it would get to a point that it would pick one spot where it would be very, very painful, and it would sort of like the intensity increases, and then so it could be around my thighs or around my calves or around my leg area, because I can't sit cross-legged. The intensity would get to a point, the intensity would just increase and increase and increase until it goes to a point where then it's gone.
There's before you continue, so I had something interesting. There's a couple interesting parallels here. One is that most people I talk to have that point where they almost quit. The intensity at the beginning, over the first 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, increases to a point where, for me, it felt like my back was going to break. I was convinced I was going to permanently injure myself. I was cramping everywhere. I was in so much pain that somehow my mind was convincing me that I'd better give up or I'm going to regret it. I was absolutely at that place. And for me, it was, I didn't actually get in the car. I didn't have a car. I would have to call a shuttle or something.
Yeah.
So I couldn't, I would probably would have left if I could have.
Yeah.
But the pain was so intense, and then I decided I'm going to make myself do one more session, and if I can't resolve it by then, I'm gone. I gave it one more session.
Yeah.
And at that session, I kind of made a bit of a breakthrough. I realized that I could manage it, and that was also when they started allowing you to bring pillows in, so I could adjust my seating a little bit. But that was that was really interesting. Now, there's something interesting that you described regarding the pain and then noticing it move.
Yeah.
Because I had a very similar situation. A big part of Vipassana is about quieting everything around you as much as possible. No interactions, no talking, no noise, no music. Everything's quiet and very, very peaceful. And your goal is to first learn how to control your attention. That's the first 3 days. Just keep your attention in one place, which is freakishly hard at first.
Yeah.
You know, it's like literally
around your nostrils.
Yeah, like literally you're paying attention to one thing for about 5 seconds, and then an hour later you're like, wait, I was supposed to be paying attention to something. What was it? Like your mind would just run off every few seconds. But yeah, I had to say by day 3, I was able to really quite steadily. I think there was 1 hour where I was like, holy crap, I never lost track of what I was paying attention to for the whole hour. I never felt my mind go, ah.
Yeah.
But I think that moving pain is very meaningful because are you aware of the concept that physical and emotional pain happen in the same part of the brain?
No, I'm not.
There is a woman in New Zealand, actually, to understand, it was in the paper very recently, who has a slight genetic anomaly where she can't feel pain. And what's interesting about it is she can't feel physical pain or emotional pain. The same part of the brain's responsible for both.
Yeah.
So when you feel heartbreak and it feels like as bad as getting stabbed by a knife, it literally feels as bad as getting stabbed by a knife. That part of the brain is responding the same way to the level of pain you're feeling. Well, one's physical, one's emotional, but the same part of the brain deals with both. Now, what I notice in a lot of coaching and in my own investigations of myself is that if I feel an emotion, any kind of pain, and I ignore it, it amplifies. I can't control it. It just keeps growing as though my brain is saying, he's not paying attention, turn up the volume, we need to get his attention on this. And for me, this was very difficult because I'd ignore anger and then it would become rage. I'd ignore sadness and it would become depression. I'd try to ignore every uncomfortable emotion, and at some point it would overwhelm me in some kind of explosive madness. That sensation of sitting in like cross-legged and feeling a pain on your leg. In Vipassana, the approach was quite different. Instead of ignoring it, you explore it with your mind.
You observe it, yeah.
You observe it. You're just gonna, oh yeah, I feel my knee hurts. Interesting, my knee hurts. And all your attention goes to your knee hurting. You're absolutely observing it. You're almost like with mental fingers, like poking it and exploring it.
And not judging it or anything.
Not judging it, just saying this is what it feels like and this is what's happening and it's not hurting me. And it's at that point where it can actually resolve and go away, and then the next observation, somewhere else in your body hurts. I remember in like day 1 and day 2, for me it was itching. I'd feel an itch on my back, and then I'd go look at it with my brain, and then it would go away, and then I'd feel an itch on my shoulder, and it'd just keep popping up all over my body like popcorn. And then it would get then the muscles, and then big cramps, but nothing ever stayed the same. And this is one of the core concepts of Vipassana. Anicca.
Yeah,
is that everything
changes.
It's constantly changing. And you get to sit and observe this. It's like, that pain is there, and then 30 seconds later, it's totally gone. But some other pain that wasn't there before is now totally there. It's really interesting to observe each of the lessons that they bring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and going back to my experience, and so I the thing that I notice is that when it gets to that point, it becomes very, very intense, and then it disappears. Is that one thing that we never? It became quite a special moment for me, because after that session, I went back to my room and thought about it, and you know, how often do we notice that time when pain actually disappears, even physical pain or emotional pain whatsoever. So if we're like experiencing some pain or back pain whatsoever, one day we just wake up and it's gone. But we never ever notice that moment when it flicks the switch, when that moment, that pain became nothing. We never
It's the same thing for sickness.
Yeah. So
You have a bad cough and then you stop coughing.
it's coming,
You're
but,
like, wait,
but,
what?
but there was a moment where you were sick and then not sick. There was that flip, and then we never really get to notice that moment. And so for me is one thing, the wisdom, if you like, that came out of that, I realized that when things become very, very, very intense, I know that a breakthrough is just about to happen. That, you know, this, I'm just right at the brink of growth. You know, the same thing that when it became very, very intense, and then it flicked, and then all of a sudden, also to add to that, is that I become more flexible. I become more flexible, and so
Because you stop fighting it.
because
hard.
and so with that, with my approach in life, every time there's something that upsets me, or there's things that's giving me a whole lot of pain, I approach it I approach it with the mindset of, one, this is not gonna last forever. You know, at some point this is going to disappear, because nothing ever lasts forever. And then also I come in with the mindset that this is to teach me something, and that on the other side of this, I'm going to be better, I'm going to be stronger, and I'm going to be wiser, and gave me sort of like, I guess, a tool, if you like, on how to approach a pain when I experienced it in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that all happened from by not talking to anyone and just observing yourself, and yeah, that makes the experience so special, because you gain all this insight by just observing yourself.
Yeah. I found that quite amazing.
Yeah.
Let's wait a bit for the blender to finish. Well, we'll be right back. There we go, man. I think it's safe to continue.
Okay.
Yeah. So, wow, I had so many experiences through the course, and there are a couple of points where I felt like I had significant breakthroughs in my experience. But one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't describe about the experience is that the entire course is taught by video. The founder, the guy who brought together the principles of Vipassana. Let me back up a little bit more. Yeah. So Vipassana is the process, the meditation process, is thought to have been created by Buddha. Yeah.
So it was the technique that he used when he became enlightened.
But it's entirely non-religious. It has no connection to modern day Buddhist religion. There's nothing religious at the camp. It's run in a very, very structured way, but there's nothing religious about it. And the guy who pulled this together into teachings that are taught at the Vipassana meditation retreats, his name is S.N. Goenka. And Goenka, he's passed away now some years ago?
Yeah, he's passed away in 2007, I think. Yeah, so he's been, he's hasn't been around for over a decade now.
So they have these videos where he's instructing at the beginning of each meditation session, and then closing up each meditation session, and each meditation session lasts between an hour and an hour and a half usually, sometimes longer for the determined meditations. and the meditation overall lasts like 11 to 12 hours a day.
11 hours a day.
Quite a bit of it's done in your room, at your own leisure.
Yeah. So there's like the group meditation and there's the personal meditation.
It was well balanced, I thought, because you could go as intensely as you wanted, and there were times I'd fall asleep in bed, but that was what my body needed, So no judgment there, I guess. No one's like sitting there yelling at you. Yeah. So, but what was amazing to me about the videos was that I thought, well, this is daft, Like, how am I supposed to learn anything from? Why couldn't I have done this at home or something, Yeah. And but it was really fascinating to me that I remember on day 7, in the second session of the day, like the right before lunch session, at the end of the session, Goenka's video came on and he did his thing, and then he said something like, you may have experienced something. I don't remember what it was. Some particular, very specific realization or sensation or experience. This was day 7, session 2, and he nailed it. I had just had this experience, and I remember feeling like, how in the world can he's not even here, he's not even alive, but it somehow, the process of unraveling, of you learning and experiencing this, happens in such a predictable way that he could teach it that precisely, and that's why it's so amazingly powerful. That blew me away. It absolutely blew me away. That a video could see inside my head, like that's what it felt like. It's like, where is he? Yeah, that was really stunning, and it gave me a lot of. I'm a very skeptical kind of guy, generally. Like, I want proof, and I want experiential proof, not just someone pointing at references. And that was what this was. And this is the very interesting thing about Vipassana that I learned later, is that in Indian philosophy, I'll say, there are 4 different words for knowledge. The simplest word for knowledge is kind of like, someone told me, therefore that's my knowledge, right? And the deepest, the 4th word is the deepest. It is, I have experienced it and I know it to be true for myself. I've seen it with my own eyes, that kind of thing. I felt it with my own hands. And Vipassana starts from that end of the spectrum. They don't tell you anything. They first make you experience it, and then they try to help you understand what you've just experienced. And I was like, this is so backwards, but it was brilliant. I never would have trusted anything they were saying, because I would have always wondered, they told me I was going to feel this. Is that why I feel this? Like, is my brain, like, are they brainwashing me? Nah, they didn't say anything. Yeah. Just like, do this, and then after, like, you may have experienced that. And I'm like, whoa. That was the whole 10 days.
So they teach you a new technique. So basically how it works is that you would meditate all throughout the day, and you'll have like an audio guiding you through. And then at night they have what they call the evening discourse, which is basically you watching a video and him explaining what you've just learned all throughout the day. So why did you do it? And then right at the end of it, he's going to introduce the next step to learning the technique that you're going to be doing the next day. So he preps you just before, like, this is going to be the next bit. And then all throughout the next day, you're going to be learning it again. And then in the evening, he's going to explain again why you experience what you've experienced and why it is vital to learn the things that you've just learned that day. And basically the whole 10 days, if I was to describe it, the whole 10 days is designed to introduce the technique to you, and bit by bit, day after day, they teach you chunks of the technique. So once you get to sort of like about the day 8 or day 9, you pretty much already know what the whole technique is about, and it's just about enhancing your practice. But yeah, they basically, it's kind of like I guess learning. Day 1 they teach you how to add and to minus, and then in day 2 they teach you how to divide and to multiply, and then by the end, I guess by day 8, day 9, you're learning calculus. So that's they break it down.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to my next 10-day session. Actually, I haven't booked it yet, but I'm definitely. At first, when I left, I was like, I love this. I'm so glad I did it. I'm not sure I want to come back. I was like, that was like a serious
I
10
remember
days.
you telling me that. You did say that. It's like, oh, I don't think.
Like, I'm not sure what I would get more of, but now it's been 2.5 years, and now I'm definitely like, I'm ready for the next. I'm aware that there's more I can learn. Somehow I know that. It's obvious to me somehow.
There's one thing that you have to watch out for, though, which I feel in this whole, the first 2 days, and it is what it is. That was the experience, and that was the wisdom I was meant to take from that. Is that I expected myself to get into the groove that quickly.
Right where you left off.
Right where I left off, and I did not. Absolutely not.
I know I'm way out of shape in my meditation.
Yeah, I expected to sort of like just, like fit right in like a glove, and it did not. In fact, I don't know if you remember that the 10 days that the new students were actually ahead of the old students in the technique. Did you notice that?
No.
No. The new students were actually learning the technique, sort of like ahead of the old students, and they only just come together at the same time on day 4. From day 1 to day 3, the new students were ahead of the old students.
Do you mean that the old students do an extra day of anapana breathing, of the just focusing the attention?
No, I think that new students get taught quicker, and then sort of like basically the day 1 is expanded to day 2 for the old students, but the new students, they do have day 1, they have day 2.
No, I didn't notice.
No. I noticed that the first time, but I just wondered like, oh, maybe sort of like it's just how it is. And then the second time I did, it's like, now I understand why. Because it's actually hard, for me personally anyway, it was harder.
You were trying harder.
To get into it at the beginning, which is weird because you'd think that, oh, I've done this before, I should be able to.
Well, I think that is the problem.
Yeah.
Is that you think I should be able to, so you end up subtly forcing it, and you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
And now then now you're now defying the very core principles of Vipassana, which is craving. You're craving for that sensation that you had in that previous course that you did. You were craving for that same experience that you had, which is never going to be re-experienced the second time. Whatever experiences that you've experienced in the past, those are unique and one-off. Basically, every experiences that we experience from this point forward, they're all going to be new experiences, and every single one of them is just gonna come and go, and they're like kind of like a paper towel. As you pull one, that's a one-off use, and then goes to the bin, and that's it. It's lived its purpose. And so and one thing that I've learned from Vipassana is that every moment every moment comes into our lives to serve a purpose, and once that purpose is served, that is served, and the next experience is going to be different. The same way that and the approach that I've taken when I meet new people is that this encounter is going to be a one-off encounter, hence I'm going to make the most out of this encounter, because this is not going to be, there won't be a repeat of this encounter. The next encounter that we're going to have is going to be completely different and going to be unique in its own ways. Hence the whole live each moment to the fullest has taken a whole new different meaning for me, because of that, not realizing that every moment is a one-off. It doesn't come back. Once you've served its purpose, whether you feel it has or it hasn't, it's not coming back. And so I guess that's why I struggled the second time. I was expecting to just go, and I'm back into it. I'm ready.
Yeah, that's
but
good to know.
It was difficult.
Did you have any unexpected experiences at the camp? Not even necessarily during the meditation practice, but just overall the experience that you had?
Unexpected.
Yeah. Like I'll give an example of one that I had that it was a strange thing, is because you're learning to focus your attention to such a fine detail. I became so much more aware of things, the smells of the forest, such a beautiful little woodland, the insects. everywhere I saw walking insects. And I remember the first one I saw was they're the stick insects, you know, that like look like a stick.
Oh yeah, the stick insects. Like, there's heaps of those. There's heaps of those.
There were hundreds of them. And the first one I saw, I'd never seen one before really. And I'm walking along, and there's a brown path, and then I see a brown stick insect crossing it, and people were almost going to step on it. I just stop and pick it up and put it on a branch. I'd never seen one before, but somehow my mind was so aware of things happening. It was so in tune with details that I could see a brown bug on a brown... I realized that it was a friendly bug that I wanted to protect. And then after that, I'd see them just everywhere. Just every branch you walk by, and there's a stick in. It was crazy. It was like the forest was just...
It's just full of those
making
things.
friends with you, you know? And I was quite surprised at how connected I felt to nature and these people who I didn't know who they were, and the place. The more connected I became with myself, the more at ease I felt about everything else. And that was quite interesting because, like, at the end of the course on day 10, you get to talk to people, and most of them you've never even heard their voice before. Yet for 10 days your brain has formed like this opinion of these people, and often they don't even speak English, or they're, you know, and you're like, oh wow,
they look so rough, and then you talk to them, they're like the sweetest guy in the world. You go like,
someone said that to me.
I judge you for the whole 9 days.
Someone said that to me. They're like, I thought you were this really tough badass. I don't know why. The clothes I was wearing or something. And then, it's hilarious. Yeah.
Man. And then people ask me all this wonderful questions. It's like, oh man, do you like are you like some kind of a you know, like that guy that, you know, that go hiking on snow mountains and all that sort of stuff? Like, why do you think that? Oh, you've been wearing this hoodie that says Alpine Sports, and I just my mind just went all the way down. I was like, that would have been cool, and I said, but just snowboarding. but
that's kind of it, isn't it? Is that you take the smallest detail and you observe it, and you build everything on that. You become so observant that everything extrapolates. Even those little details. Someone's haircut becomes like a statement of their personality. You know? It's pretty wild.
And also going back to your connectedness, and this is sort of like we had this little discussion earlier as well, just before we started recording, is that post Vipassana, one thing that I have really noticed once I went back to my flat and then I would meditate in my room, every time somebody slams the door from a different room, I can, my sensation has been so heightened that I can feel that vibration sort of like flowing through me, like as if like a soft breeze, you know, when that door slammed, I can feel this sort of like this sound waves flowing through my body, like a. And the same thing when I was meditating in my room, and I would hear the birds sort of like chirping, and I can almost feel the rustling of the birds on the branches. Like I can feel them moving, and it's outside of me, but I can feel some vibration. And what came out of that for me is that it became, you know, the concept of I am connected with everything around me. I'm connected with the universe, brought in some kind of scientific evidence through Vipassana through me. Like I now realize that because I can feel this vibration, all these different movements that's happening around me, despite the fact that it's from a distance, then it became quite real for me that I am indeed connected with everything around me. And on top of that, also because movements that's happening, you know, from far away, sort of like affects me in a certain level. Now it became, you know, when people say when you drop a pebble into to the lake, you just don't know how far the ripple goes. And now I also start to live this concept of whatever it is that I do in some way, shape or form, it will affect somebody else out there. That anything that I do is not going to be enclosed within my own space. If I did something, maybe I may not be aware of it, or I probably don't know what exactly, but somehow it will affect somebody out there in the long run. And so makes you a little bit more self-aware of the actions that you take, because you know that this is not going to be a personal experience only. It will be a universal experience for everybody in some way.
Yeah,
shape,
it's
or
like
form.
that's the butterfly flaps its wings or whatever, but you're the butterfly, so you realize that hey, what I do has effects beyond what I can see. That's pretty powerful, and that realization that the more connected I was to myself, the more connected I was to the rest of the universe was really eye-opening for me, because I used to only think outside of me. I don't focus all my attention outward, and I felt apart from what I was doing, and that was a very disconnected kind of feeling. I felt like victories weren't mine. I took failures very personally because I felt like it was my fault somehow. I was very judgmental about myself, but once I started really focusing on, it's very difficult to describe, but when I started focusing my attention on inward connection, those emotions didn't have that effect on me, and I felt like I could have a much greater impact, much more easily. I was much less afraid of messing something up, because I somehow intuitively know straight away what was right, what was wrong, what was good for me to do, what was bad for me to do. I can't quite I can't get, but the feeling was so blissful. There was so much peace in this sensation of being aware of what was happening inside of me. Well, let's talk a little bit maybe about we've talked a bit about how pain moves and then the meditation experience. What else really stands out in terms of the actual what happened for you during the course, the experience of meditation?
I guess in that 10 days, the more I observe myself, what I noticed is that like you said, I was getting to know myself more and more. And this is all throughout the 10 days. So backing off slightly, pre first Vipassana course, a few months before, I went through a breakup, so it sort of like took me towards sort of like quite a depressive state. And so I went to Vipassana sort of like partly to sort of like help me sort of like, it was sort of like take a break from everything, like 10-day break from the world, awesome, you know.
That's about the hardest 10-day break you can do.
Yeah, but that's not like a 10-day break, and that's great. But one thing that I did notice in myself, and somebody there pointed out, because prior to it all starts, you get to talk to some of the people, right? So I spoke to one of the guys, and then I mentioned that, yeah, I'm going through this thing, and I suppose he didn't mention it that time, but he did tell me on the 10th day that you look quite stressed out. You know, when I first met you 10 days ago, Wednesday evening, it's like you looked a little bit stressed out. But then towards the end of it, I was starting to feel this lightness, this sort of like that I have this sense of relief that I have kind of let go of all the aversion that I had towards what I was going through, and I'm no longer craving a different me. I wasn't craving a different experience or a different past. I was really understanding what it meant to be present. And so by the 10th day, it was the first time in 8 months since the breakup, first time in 8 months that I really, honestly and authentically, happily laughed. I was laughing like how I always have, and then it was mentioned by one of the guys. It's like, you look so stressed, but now you look you're so lively, you're so cheerful. I'm like, I know, and I noticed that. I just felt like in these 10 days I sort of like pressed the reset button for me. That sort of like, okay, what you've gone through, what has been and what's already happened is now done, and now poof, reset, new, and I remember vividly driving back and then feeling just this sense of appreciation of being being alive, I guess, of being myself. And that experience, that 10-day experience, actually started my personal development journey. That's when I met you. That's when I became part of Brojo, and that's when I started to explore personal development in a, you know, in a very sort of deeper level, like reading books, listening to audios, and all that sort of stuff. Personal development became a passion.
Once you sense, this has happened for me too, is that once you sense the opportunity and the possibility for growth and change, man, you develop a hunger for it. You're like, what else can I read? What podcast can I subscribe to? Recommend your 5 favorite audiobooks to me, and just start. Your reading list grows, and that's fantastic. I'm actually writing an article about that right now. About, eating big. Lessons from bodybuilders, actually. It's really interesting, like the amount of food you have to eat to grow that enables growth is huge. But that was a big start for me as well. And one of the most significant experiences for me during the Vipassana meditation was probably around day 6 or 7. I had somehow injured my leg, just pulled a muscle just above the knee before I came doing leg exercises or something. Well, I didn't even really notice it until I was at Vipassana, and you're so focused on every sensation in your body that one just stood out like a spotlight. And you're sitting, I can't sit cross-legged due to a childhood injury. My legs don't bend flexibly enough that way, so I have to sit sort of Japanese style with my legs tucked under me, which would create a tension just on the muscle above the knee.
Yeah.
And it was okay for the first 30 minutes, and then it starts hurting, and then it starts hurting more, and then it starts hurting more. And there was a really interesting, and this was actually part of why I almost quit, was I was like, I'm going to be like limping forever after this. Was that a big part of what you're taught at Vipassana is to evaluate your sensations not as good or bad, but just as they truthfully are. Just that they are just sensations. There's nothing good or bad about them. And that includes cramps, that includes a mosquito biting you, that includes itches, that includes every uncomfortable thing you can imagine. They are just sensations. And this is one of the key lessons I got, was that there are these layers of processing that your brain does, and you can peel them apart. And once you learn how to do that, you have an enormous amount of control, which I've been exploring a lot more since with cold showers. Going into the cold shower and then just splitting that apart and saying, I feel the cold, but I don't feel the cold. It doesn't hurt. Even though I'm brutally aware that it's cold, it doesn't feel uncomfortable, it just feels cold. It's really interesting to play with that division of, we'll have to talk some more about that, because it's so similar to this particular aspect. But what happened for me around day 7 was that muscle was just really, really hurting. This was during the determined meditations, when we're stretching it out to like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that. And you're like, oh, it's killing me. It's just killing me. And your mind, your attention is just totally just trying to deal with, breathe one more second. You're just holding on.
And it lags. It lags even more when you do that.
Yeah. And then it's like staring at the pot and trying to make it boil or something. And what was interesting was that I got to the place where I'm like, okay, I really got to figure out what it is that they're trying to teach me here about just seeing it not as pain, but just seeing it as pressure, just as a sensation. And I think they actually use the word pressure, that when you feel like a cramp, it's not pain, it's just pressure. The pain is something you add to it because you perceive it as a negative thing. Therefore, your brain says change it, and that's what pain is your brain trying to motivate you to change it. But you have the ability to insert yourself between there and change that interpretation. And I was like, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to try to see it just as pressure. And the pain had to get bad enough before I could do that. It had to actually get pretty freaking severe. And I said, I'm just going to sit with it, gritting my teeth, And then all of a sudden, I got it. It was like flipping a light switch. Boom. It's like all of a sudden, the pain went away, and I just felt pressure. And I was kind of shocked by it, because it was like, where'd the pain go? I feel an intense pressure. It's like, oh, the whole muscle above my knee, but particularly this one particular thread of my quadricep. I can feel exactly where it is. I could probably like outline it with a Sharpie. That was one of the weird things about Vipassana is you could feel every muscle fiber,
Yeah.
you know, but the pain was gone, but the pressure wasn't. And I could with my mind, I could explore all around the muscle, but it wasn't hurting. It was just intense pressure, but no pain. And then I was just so in awe of this that I immediately felt this huge sense of gratitude that if this muscle had not been injured and I had not had the opportunity to experience that pain, I never would have understood the difference between the pressure and the pain, that they are separate things. And I was so grateful for that muscle hurting. And the weirdest thing in the world happened. It suddenly became pleasurable.
Right.
That blew my mind. This muscle, which seconds ago I was ready to just let out a scream and storm out of the place, crawl out of the place, I was in so much pain, was now just sending waves of pleasure through my body.
Right.
And this was the same pain, which meant that my mind was totally in charge of deciding how it interpreted that pressure to be. Once I realized that that's true for my muscle, which is clearly a physical reality, right? It's injured. There's no doubt about that. Then what about emotional reality? When I feel emotional discomfort, do I have to react to it negatively? No. Do I have to see that as pain? No. Could I choose to see it as pleasure? Sure. And we know that this is true. You see extremes like sadomasochism and people enjoy pain. I don't get that, but now I understand how it happens. I understand that the brain is so much more flexible than we give it credit for, and the fact that we can actually reprogram that on the fly anytime we want, that's a skill I want to master.
Yeah. Just to look at that from a different angle, for me, one realization that I had is that what they teach you is like is that we know the uneducated mind and uneducated sort of untrained mind is that we react blindly to stimulus or to any stimuli. So somebody say if you feel heat, you just go ooh, or somebody punches you, it's like oh, or even in that sort of like physical, we have this natural reaction or almost like involuntary reaction to whatever stimulus we get from the outside. The same thing if we get like an emotional emotional stimulus. Say somebody yells at us, and the reaction is to get angry. Why are you yelling at me? Or someone says something mean to you, and then the reaction is to feel really sad whatsoever. And they had a name. In Vipassana, they have a name for this reaction. They call it the sankhara. Which is basically the more we react to external stimulus, the stronger the sankhara, and the stronger the misery it will bring into your life. So, what I have learned is that, same to you when you said that it got to a point where you're just feeling it, but it's not there. And I think for me, the realization is that when we get this external stimulus from somewhere, there is actually a space between the stimulus and the reaction. But this space is so almost invisible, so thin to most of us that we just react straight away. And that's why we get angry when someone honks at us when we're driving, or all these different things. Or if someone says something good to us, we just, oh, hey, thank you. We had this because we react almost involuntarily and without any control on when the reaction happens. What Vipassana teaches you is to stretch the distance, the space between stimulus and reaction, to being able to just sit within that space and actually hover there. It's like, wait, what actually just happened? When you're feeling that pain, you experience the stimulus, but you go like, what is it really? And then you have that, you now sort of like, you're now no longer responding blindly, you're not responding involuntarily, you are now taking control on, you're now choosing, you're now having the choice of what reaction you could give that stimulus. Before, you only, basically every stimulus you just have one reaction. With Vipassana, you're able to stretch that, and for every stimulus now you got a choice. When someone yells at you, oh, hey, ugly, maybe in the past you would react react with sadness, or you react with anger. This time you now, with being able to sort of like observe and stay in that space, you're now able to choose the reaction that you're going to give that stimulus, which changes your whole way of life and your well-being. Because if someone now says something that is quite unpleasant to you, you can now respond with compassion, that maybe that person is going through something really, really difficult, something really, really, he must be so miserable that he had to pass some pain to other people. And you know, and that is more like the insight that came out of that for me.
It does. It changes everything about your options and how you respond to life, because you're constantly feeling things, and your brain reacts with, oh, I have to do this. So quickly responds. But one of the really fascinating things for me was that Vipassana describes sensations that we tend to react to in one of two categories, which are referred to as cravings and aversion. So an aversion is someone yelling at me, or bug biting me. We react with aversion. I don't want that.
Yeah, aversion is basically not. Aversion is not wanting what you're experiencing. So or not wanting what you have. So that's aversion.
But cravings work the same way. And what's really fascinating is that when your dopamine triggers in your brain because you see something you want, it's a desire, it's a lust. It's painful to say no. When you see that slice of pizza or that cake or that hot chick or whatever it is, your brain, it's a kind of pain. We don't equate it as pain because it's an I want feeling rather than an I don't want feeling.
They call it
it's
misery.
It's still pain. Yeah, it's still
they
misery.
Call it misery in Vipassana. It's like it's miserable.
And this is the key thing, is that both cravings and aversions are fundamentally the same, and that you can absolutely separate the reaction from that stimulus. And therefore Vipassana is used a lot in drug rehabilitation. Because you can get that craving and say, yeah, I see the craving, that's okay, I don't have to feel the pain of the craving, I'm just aware of the craving and I'll just sit with it.
Yeah,
just like that pain hurting knee or whatever you're experiencing.
Yeah. So basically, from my own personal insight, what I found is that aversion and craving is basically two sides of the same coin. Aversion is not wanting or hating what you're experiencing right now or what you have right now. Could be like, oh, I have aversion towards your current relationship, or aversion towards your current health. Craving is the other side of the coin, which is wanting what you don't have. So it's like, oh, your aversion towards your current relationship creates craving for a different person, or your aversion towards your current health creates craving towards say like a body that you've seen on a magazine. So it is the same coin. It's the same misery coin. It's the two different sides of this misery coin. Either way, when you're experiencing, you're living with aversion or you're living with craving, there is a misery that's tied to it. There's always that sense of I am not living the way I want life to be, and that's very Vipassana fundamental, understanding those two things and understanding how those two things, how being equanimous, they say, not responding to stimuli blindly, could save you from the misery of these two things.
let's wrap up pretty quickly here. I think we've got two final things I want to talk about. One was any key things that have happened for you since the Vipassana experience. Any major changes you've noticed? And then I think we should wrap up with any final tips we have for anybody who's thinking of going through the course. Why don't you go ahead and start with any reflections on your...
So probably I'll talk about the latest one. So it's been like it's been a few years, 3.5 years since my first one, and about like 6 months since my second one. And one thing that I've always pre-Vipassana, I was this very aggressive, passionate kind of guy that when I want something, I'm just gonna go for it with so much hunger and this really intense aggression, which I call passion. When I post Vipassana, I have somehow started responding to things quite differently. So I'm a little bit more relaxed, calm when I'm attempting anything that I want to do, and I'm not as I've always been. And I've struggled to marry the two, like, because I'm always a believer of passion. That passion is something that we need to achieve what we want to achieve. It wasn't until lately that I realized that like passion sometimes could be a form of aversion or craving towards whatever it is that you're going through, craving that gold medal that you don't have, or craving for this life that you're currently living, and tying it back to the strong determination that we get taught when we start the Vipassana. Strong determination, you sit there and you have strong determination, you don't move, and you just observe the pain. And
I'd like to add something to that, because it's interesting hearing you relate that.
Yeah.
So I did my Vipassana course in February 2017. And 2017 I refer to as the year of reflection. Now this is really interesting, because what happened the year of acceptance is what Dan and I called it. We both went through a similar thing. He has not done Vipassana yet. I put it on his list, so you got to do this, man. But I related it more towards my journaling. Like I was actively journaling, and I was working on understanding and relating to emotions and letting go of them. And what I thought was that process through the year was the main reason that by the end of 2017, I got to this place where I felt that my past was beautiful. I had no failures. It was full of great experiences and lessons, all even in like the worst breakup experience. I could see that relationship for all of its beautiful things, and everything else was just a lesson. There was no pain anymore. And what was interesting was at the end of 2017, I lost all motivation to do anything. I didn't feel driven anymore. I was like, I'm so happy with life. I don't need anything. I just felt happy.
Yeah.
I just felt happy. Like I was like, I don't feel, which meant to me that my past drive had been based on pain. A sense of not good enough, a sense of I need to prove myself, a sense of scarcity, fear, anger, unfairness, justice, whatever. There was pain pushing me. I felt like I had to work 60 hours a week, or I had to prove I could succeed at something. It felt like I was trying to prove it to myself. But after that year, it was gone. I was like, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. Life's perfect the way it is. And I hadn't really connected it to when I started the Vipassana course. But I'll bet that had a huge point, because that was the point at which I started looking at emotions differently. Started looking at them as experiences. Dashboard indicator lights that didn't hurt by themselves. They only hurt if I wanted them to hurt. I could choose how annoying they were. Otherwise, I could just ignore them, or just treat them as, oh, that's interesting information. That's anger. I feel threatened. What should I do about that? Let's think about that, and I could reflect on it without feeling reactive. And that changed a lot of things. And since then, and it has taken a while. My motivation has picked up in a big way, but based on a completely different thing. Rather than being based on this sense of I don't have enough, or I'm not good enough and I need to prove myself, fight tooth and nail to get something out of this world. Now it's just based on my values. Everything that I do is just now based on, this is what's important to me, this is what defines me, be that. So whatever I choose to do, writing or teaching or traveling or people I hang out with or places I go, is all not based on proving myself to anyone. I really don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm not trying to prove myself to myself. I'm perfectly happy with who I am, but I do feel a hunger to do things again. It feels like a healthy kind of passion.
Interesting. Well,
but it's developed very slowly.
That's a really good thing. Because what I've kind of come to realize is that it's sort of like, I guess it's more like a comfort, from my reflection and all that sort of stuff. I've realized that I have redefined what passion is, and it's slightly different from what you said, but I guess I could learn from what you just said. Actually, I was actively listening. What I have redefined passion as more of more like a strong determination to live by my values rather than this hunger for something, because even in some motivational videos, that's kind of like what you hear. Passion is like this hunger for whatever it is that you want to achieve, and yes, somehow after Vipassana I started to feel that that's not the right way to approach whatever venture I'd like to take on. Yeah, because it's craving or aversion towards what I have. But I almost got to a point where I was not liking what I was going through because I feel very apathetic. But now I realize that as long as I just have to really sit down and establish what is the intention behind what it is that I'm trying to achieve.
It's no longer out of need, it's out of purpose. It's out of,
But, so it's sort of like, so for me, it looks like you've already got it figured out. For me, I think it's still sort of like in the process of unfolding itself. But that is definitely post Vipassana that you'd realize you'd go through this phase of acceptance, like you said, that you'd find that I'm actually complete. Like I am quite happy, and which is on one side is good, but on the other side you kind of just sort of like lost
a big change.
You lose this drive to achieve anything, and especially if you're like all your life you've spent your life sort of like just being an achiever. Feeling that it's just sort of like something got taken away from me. It's like, what's this?
And then questioning, was that unhealthy? Why was I so driven before, but now I'm just happy with how things are,
And then you start sort of like, what's going on with me? Like I don't crave for the things that I used to crave anymore, and even things like I used to be very passionate about cool cars and all that sort of stuff, and I bought that car that I have right now before the convertible and that before Vipassana. But now I look at it and I was like, why the hell did I buy you? I was like, it felt like a different person. A different person made that decision, Maybe it was a different person. It was a different person. So that's one thing that I've noticed, that there's definitely, once you have a taste of what it meant to be equanimous and not have craving and aversion in your life, there's this shift on where your motivation is coming from. Yeah, definitely. And I'm still trying to marry it up to sort of like try to sort of like really define what that meant for me, but it's sort of like in its window, it's slowly unfolding itself.
Now, have you been doing Vipassana meditation regularly since the course?
Irregularly?
Yeah. So I've done it as well. Like I would meditate. I found it quite interesting to meditate with someone else, particularly if I've met someone who I'm dating who has been through Vipassana. It's an incredibly intimate thing to you're not talking, your eyes are closed, but you're in the same room together, and that sense of awareness and energy is quite amazing. I found that quite powerful, and I quite enjoy that. what I really liked about Vipassana though was I could practice it anywhere. Sitting on the bus, waiting at the bus stop, sitting in a cafe, waiting for food. Just take a moment and just boom, go into Vipassana mode where I'm sensing and feeling what the process I refer to as scanning, where you're evaluating all the sensations inside your body physically, emotional, physical, whatever. You can do that anywhere. I found that very relaxing.
But yeah, so it is definitely. So I guess we could move on to sort of like what our tips are.
Tips, key tips. So if you decide, so first of all, personally, I highly recommend you give this a go.
Absolutely.
The fact is, as humans, we have such powerfully complicated psychologies, particularly between the different aspects of the brain. I talk a lot about the triune brain, which describes the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and then the human brain, and they're quite distinct, but they don't talk to each other well. And this, in a sense, because the emotions happen in the mammalian brain, sensation happens in the reptilian and the mammalian brain. Emotions like love, which is oxytocin, desire, dopamine. These all happen in lower levels, but our rational mind reacts so strongly, so quickly. But the fact is, unlike a mammal, we have the ability to control that. We have the ability to interfere. It's kind of a superpower that none of us knows how to do. None of us were born knowing this. No one's ever taught us. And to go through an experience and realize that you've got these almost like X-Men-like capabilities, if you choose to invest the time, it's just worth exploring it and discovering that is in you. I mean, that's. If I never got anything out of the course, I'm still glad I went, and I got a lot out of the course.
For me, the fact that I am even talking about it, and I'm in a place in my life where personal development is my topmost priority. It's attached in anything that I do. That's a testament of the difference that the course could or has the possibility of creating in your life. Because for me, after that first course, something has flicked inside of me that made me realize that there's more to life than sort of you waking up in the morning and going to work and then going back to home and then and watching TV and then go to sleep and then carrying on with that cycle. There is a much higher purpose on why I am here in this world, and that was awakened by me going to that 10-day course. It sort of like it was like a little nudge that sort of like, hey, there's a much higher purpose here. It's a much higher reason why I am treading this earth, and that all happened. That all sort of like that sort of came into. I came into a realization while I was there, and after I've left. And so, your experience might be different, and it will be. However, it will just be as unique and as personal as it can be.
And you'll learn exactly what you need to.
Yeah,
that's the cool thing.
You will find what you're looking for. And you know how people say like you will find what you're looking for. I think that Vipassana is like that. You will find what you're looking for, and every single one of us are looking for different things, and we all are in different stages.
It's fascinating to me too that you talk to some of the guys there that have been there 5 or 6 times. It's exactly the same videos every time. It's exactly the same process, and they say the experience is 100% different every time they go.
And I second that. On my second experience, it was the same video, absolutely. But somehow, I guess it's kind of like watching, when you watch a movie the first time, and then you watch it the second time, you see bits that you didn't really notice the first time you see it, and then you watch it the third time. I don't know if you guys have ever spent time watching a movie more than once, but for me, it was like there were bits in that course, in different, in different days of that course that was not revealed to me the first time. That I only just come to realize it the second time I did it. So. It's a very
Profound.
Yeah, very profound experience. Very good word. It's a very profound experience. Very different, especially
If you haven't done any
if you haven't done
meditation
anything like
before,
that. You know, it's very unheard of to a modern human being, I suppose.
Well, that's actually the key thing is we're surrounded by noise
And technology.
entertainment, beeping phones, and we don't realize the cost that has to our attention. And that was another big thing was the attention. But I still think learning I can control my attention, but also learning that 100% of my experience of happiness or unhappiness is under my control. It was not anyone else that could make that happen. And that changed everything for me, because it used to be I very much thought of my world as incomplete, that I needed friends, I needed a romantic partner to make me happy. That experience at Vipassana was transformative for me in that way, because I could disconnect from that idea that happiness comes from outside and that someone else can give me that. And that's changed everything since. That's freed me from a very unhealthy cycle of needy, a needy life, seeking this happiness from outside, from anywhere I could.
Yeah. So tips. Don't quit. And I just tell people that all the time, and this is very, 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 very important. You have to, if you're going to do this, you have to commit that despite of anything, you're gonna see it through until the 10th day. And I've told everybody this, and probably only one person kind of turned around and said like, oh, I didn't really, only one person out of, and I have recommended this to about 5 different people since I've done it the first time. About 5 people have done it. Only one person has turned around and kind of like told me, didn't really get much out of it, and but with the other people that I've spoken to, and I tell people this is what I told people as well, like before the second course started, I told the new students, like, whatever happened, don't quit, because on the 10th day you'd be so glad that you stayed. You'd be so glad you stayed, and I'm almost 99% sure that you will feel the same way. There's the 1%, because there's always that 1% that I but almost every single time people do tell me like, yeah, I'm really, really glad that I stayed whole 10 day. I almost quit like day 4, day 5, day 6, whatever. But come day 10, they say like, oh yeah, I'm really glad that I did it. And the only investment that you have to invest really is time. That's really that's the only investment you have, and it's 10 days.
But this is the key. You're worth it. You're worth that 10 days, man.
Yeah.
It's worth more to you than any 2-week vacation you'll ever take.
Yeah. And I tell people like, I believe, and this is yet to be proven because it hasn't been 10 years yet since I've done it, but I reckon that 10 days is going to change the next 10 years of your life. And I believe that, and I think it's already changing, since then. For the past 3.5 years, my life has changed since I last did it.
It keeps changing, which is really fascinating. It's like I haven't been practicing it since on a regular basis at all. Still feeling the change, still feeling the continual change, because my perspective has been forever altered.
Yeah, you once you've been energized by Vipassana, somehow it's sort
once
of
you
like
have that experience, like I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
I can't unsee the truth of how my mind works.
And I that's really my only tip, just to don't quit.
That's a great tip, man. That's the essential
thing. Until the 10th day. Don't even you're allowed to think about quitting, but don't quit.
I'd say I probably got 2 tips. One is when you're there and you're feeling uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable, socially isolated, anything, embrace that. Embrace that idea of looking within and bringing all your attention inside. It took me quite a few days to realize that the whole point of taking my phone away and not being able to make eye contact or talk to people or do anything was that they were trying to take all of your attention and bring it inside of your skin. Didn't get that at first, but it was so obvious by about day 6 or day 7, and I could appreciate so much what that was teaching me. I've never tried that before. That was quite amazing. And the other thing I would personally recommend, particularly for those of you that are into self-development or part of Brojo, is you're not supposed to bring any kind of food, books, pens, paper, anything really. But I would bring a journal. Personally, I needed to write down my mind's exploding.
You're not allowed to do that, though.
You're not allowed to do that. I would still, you won't get in trouble for it. Just keep it in your room, just a piece of paper or two. I had 3 sheets of paper, and I wrote in the smallest print imaginable, and I filled them in the 10 days. I filled them, like every day was a journal with. And I still have it. It's brilliant, right? Look like
I wouldn't
hieroglyphs.
recommend that. But that's my.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. But I found if I didn't, I felt a kind of panic that I'm going to forget these critical, essential lessons of the experience, and I needed to be able to capture that. That's me. So, and actually, everyone I've talked to that's gone since has said, "Thank God I brought a journal." So it's totally up to you. It's technically against the rules, but again, the goal is to keep you focused on what's going on inside of you. For me, that was actually important. Otherwise, my brain would be so busy, like, don't forget this, don't forget that, and I wouldn't be able to even do the exercises.
I didn't bring a journal. I was fine. So you guys have the choice.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. We hope we gave you some idea of what this experience is like. It's life-changing, man. And I hope you all give it a go. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.